Oh, hey there, gang. So those of you who are from the Midwest or from northern states, Pacific Northwest, etc., where you get snow, you're going to know what I'm talking about. For those of you who don't, hopefully I explain it well. You're driving in snow and you're experienced. And you take corners, you try and keep the momentum of your vehicle moving in the same direction, so everything's predictable. You know you're going to lose traction at certain points, and you don't overreact, because if you do, you make mistakes. You don't steer into the skid when you fishtail. It's when it's unexpected that you overcorrect, and that's sort of summarized in the idea that it's not until you've lost control or you realize you've lost control that you really try and assert control. So you go into the skid not knowing the skid is coming. You're not used to driving in the snow, and the skid begins and you don't expect it. Boom, I want to assert control, and often people make the mistake of steering away from the skid instead of into it. This is what's happening with media. This is what's happening with government. This is what's happening with banking. This is what's happening with NATO, with the European Union, with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, with the United Nations, with the International Monetary Fund, with the ICC, with the Trilateral Commission, with the Bilderberg Group, with the Council on Foreign Relations. This is what's happening, and we're seeing it in real time. Can you recall a time when there was this much pandemonium, when there was this much competition for your attention in the media, when this much crazy shit was happening day after day after day to try and confuse, provoke anxiety, to grab your eyeballs, to get your clicks? When in your memory have this many people, this many organizations, this many events all been vying for your attention to try and reassert control, to try and reassert their dominance, to take the reins? What's up, Drew? Can you recall a time when things seemed this chaotic? Even watching planes crash into the Twin Towers on 9/11 from school, I don't remember this level of anxiety, even in the nation. I'm a big fan of your work too, Drew. Even the events that took place after that, the creation of the Patriot Act, the consensus from the intelligence communities that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction that were later provably false, all of the things that got us into this 18-year war, even the amount of anxiety that the nation felt as a collective at that time pales in comparison to what's happening right now. Ricin being sent to the Secretary of Defense, people being assaulted and accosted and thrown out of restaurants for their political beliefs. The other is evil, my side is right, no nuance in between, 100% polarity. And to clarify, this is not happening at the center. This is not happening amongst rational people, or even people who are balanced in between the rational mind and the intuitive mind. This is not happening among these people. And for those of you who are somewhat balanced, you can see this from both perspectives. You see people on the left being driven to insanity. You see people on the right being driven to insanity, where there's no anchor. This is divide and conquer. This is the mechanism by which those entities I mentioned will try and reassert control. And we're seeing this happen. We're seeing it happen. People predicted this insanity in anticipation that Donald Trump would win the election. If this, we've had outsider candidates in the past, right? If this outsider, and Trump is legitimately an outsider, he is not a Republican, he is not a conservative, he's not a liberal, he's not a progressive, he's none of those. Go ahead. He doesn't fit in a category that we're used to seeing. All right, well, don't go. He doesn't fit in a category we're accustomed to seeing. He doesn't meet the outline of any of the animals we typically encounter. When this outsider gets in, he is going to rearrange the world, the whole planet. He is going to rearrange our psychology. He is going to rearrange the way we interact with other nations. He's going to rearrange the way we interact with one another. The paradigm has been upset. The table has been upset. The whole game has been reorganized in such a way that people don't know what to do with it. And we see the effect of that. How crazy things have become politically. This is the mainstream media, Hollywood, all of those organizations that typically control the narrative, that typically control the minds of people who rely too much on reason and too much on intuition. People who are not appropriately balanced in the middle. Aduro, hello. People who are not appropriately balanced, who are susceptible to these forces. These organizations, the very organizations the president identified in his speech to the UN, those who seek to rule from afar, if they want to circumvent the Constitution, if they want to create extra-governmental organizations, if they want to promote international banking as opposed to banking at a local level, if they want bureaucracy and bigger government, they are diametrically opposed and directly opposed to freedom, to the idea that we should have autonomy over our own lives. These organizations are opposed to that. These organizations are the arm of collectivism that is now trying to reassert its dominance on that steering wheel and correct. But it's too late. It's too late. They didn't see the internet coming. They weren't able to anticipate the wheels losing traction and just calmly steer into that skid and out of it. They didn't see it coming, and they're reacting too late to the game, and here is the chaos. Here is the loss of control. Oh shit, I overcorrected, and now I have to recorrect, and now there are more variables than I can handle coming into this situation. If they had anticipated long-form conversations online, alternative media, if they had anticipated a counterculture welling up in the United States that would challenge the existing structure, that would challenge the status quo that they had been in control of for the last 100 years, they would have been able to calmly steer through that turn. Oh, well, we'll just shift from the puppets on CNN and Fox News and MSNBC. We'll just shift away from them. We'll gradually phase that out, and we'll start really investing in these online technologies. We'll start really investing in ownership of Google, which is inarguably, I think, the most powerful organization on the planet. We'll start putting our money into Google. We'll get the right people in and around Google so that we can control the digital narrative now. We can suppress speech that is not in alignment with our globalist agenda, things that are not in alignment with collectivist control over all of these countries. And I think maybe it's the view I'm taking of this thing that makes me a little more adept at picking out these patterns. But I'm not looking laterally. I'm trying to imagine what are the most powerful organizations on the planet, and what would I do if I were in control of those organizations? I don't think you can make an argument that central banking is not up there. If I'm looking to the top of the pyramid, central banking is up there. Okay, religious groups, religious organizations, the papacy, Judaism, Islam, the powers that control those organizations, they're up there. So we got religion, we got banks. What else is there? What else is above that? You have currency control through banking, control of interest rates, control of fractional reserve lending. All roads lead to Rome. And in the same way, if I can control the media through corporations, all of those things, they're all controlled by money, right? The second thing I need to control is the religious organization, because the religious organization has a way for me to grab a hold of the minds of people psychologically. I know that they respond to stories. I know that they respond to mythology. I know they respond to archetype. And I know most people in a given geographic region believe that they were born in front of the correct book that teaches them the correct teachings that came from the correct God, and this is the one truth and the one true God. People are psychologically, emotionally, physically, everyone in their community is invested in this particular narrative. Okay, so now, if I control the narrative and I control the flow of resources, I own the world. If I'm that guy holding on to that power, and suddenly I realize that I'm losing my grip, I'm losing control of this vehicle that's steering the planet, I panic. And I start throwing shots every direction to try and get myself out of this situation. Well, what if I brake? What if I downshift? What if I turn this way? This is the panic you're seeing play out in front of you right now. The media panic, Hollywood panic, politicians panic. You're seeing terrorist events in the United States at a frequency we'd never seen. You're seeing people mailing out fake bombs to people to try and do whatever, to make people anxious. All of this, regardless of your political perspective, all of these things promote anxiety. They provoke fear, a fight or flight response, and they get you thinking on your bad foot. Your feet aren't grounded. You're not eyeing the target and thinking logically and breathing through that shot. You're fuck, balance, suppressive fire. Your default mode is fight, flight. And if I can keep you in that default mode and not allow you to rely on the rational side of your mind, I can manipulate you. I can walk you like a puppeteer right back into that status quo where everything is comfortable, everything seems fine, and the resources continually flow to me. The eye at the top of that pyramid. That's me. When I start panicking, the world starts changing. And that's what we're seeing right now. It has nothing to do with Republicans. It has nothing to do with Democrats, nothing to do with Antifa, nothing to do with conservatives, the alt-right, the Nazis, the neo-Nazis, the fascists, the marchers, the Women's March. It has nothing to do with any of these things. It has to do with the puppeteer losing control at the top. And now the apple cart is upset. Apply that thinking to these events. And when you see these things that, oh man, that pisses me off, or oh shit, that I'm emotionally invested in this thing now. No. Recognize that thought as it arises in your mind. Acknowledge it. Understand that it is emotion. It is reptile brain. And reptile brain is so deep in my conscience that I know I'm being misled if that's what's being appealed to. All of a sudden, I rise above all that emotion and all of that chaos, and I make a rationally oriented decision. All this chaos is being caused. Why? The answer is because the status quo, the power structure, those who have ruled the planet are being upset. And what is the factor that caused that upset? What changed between 2015 and 2016? The only variable that changed, and the most stark contrast between point A and point B, is the election of Donald Trump. The election of a change candidate who says, hey globalists, fuck you. Hey power structure, fuck you. We are going to reestablish and reassert the idea that the individual comes first. We will not legislate against that individual. We will not create extra governmental organizations that supersede the will of that individual. We are not going to play the game that the puppet master wants us to play. And that's why you see all of this chaos. Understand that, and it's going to allow you to just steer that car right around the turn. And you'll watch as all these people around you are sliding every which way. because they didn't anticipate the skid. You guys take it easy. Hope you get some value out of that. We'll see you.